It was just after 7 a.m. when I reached for my phone, half asleep, expecting maybe a weather update or a silly meme from a friend. But what I saw hit harder than any storm could. Now that I'm rich, you're no longer part of my plans. I need someone who fits my new lifestyle. That was it. No conversation, no closure, just a message. Cold, flat, and final. I stared at the screen, thinking it had to be some kind of joke. I was still wearing the pajamas he used to say made me look adorably domestic. Funny how that suddenly wasn't enough. The same room that once held our laughter now felt like a stranger's house. We hadn't fought. There was no sign, no growing distance, just that message, out of nowhere. I supported him through everything. Job losses, his anxiety attacks, those nights he couldn't sleep. And now I was disposable. Just like that. My phone started blowing up the moment I told a few friends. "He broke up with you. Over text?" they asked, outraged. I wanted to match their energy, but my body felt hollow. I wasn't just heartbroken. I felt erased. Like everything I'd given him, everything we'd built together, had meant nothing the second his lifestyle changed. He didn't just leave me, he replaced me. And not with a person, with a status upgrade. I kept rereading that message, thinking maybe I missed something, some explanation, some trace of the man I married. But there was nothing. Just a digital knife to the chest. He didn't even have the decency to lie kindly. And you know what hurt the most? I never asked him to be rich. I never needed luxury or status. I needed partnership. I needed honesty. Apparently, he needed someone to show off, not someone to stand by him. I started going through the memories, not the big ones, but the quiet ones. Packing lunches while he slept in. Smiling through tears when he couldn't pay rent. Sitting across from him in cheap restaurants saying, "We'll get through this." I carried us, emotionally and financially, more times than I can count. And now that he was finally where he wanted to be, I was no longer invited. I wasn't part of the picture he wanted to post. The worst part wasn't being left. It was being discarded, as if I was just a stepping stone on his path to success. I kept thinking, was I really that forgettable? That replaceable? I wasn't perfect, but I was loyal. And loyal doesn't look good in luxury cars, I guess. The world sees a power couple and forgets who held the power during the struggle. Well, he upgraded his lifestyle, but downgraded his soul. I didn't cry that day. Not because it didn't hurt. It did, in ways I can't even explain. But I think part of me went numb, like my brain was trying to shield me from the full impact. I moved through the house like a ghost, surrounded by things we once shared. His shoes by the door, his mug in the sink. Everything looked the same, except for me. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was just a woman left behind. People kept checking in, sending me long texts, calling to make sure I was okay. I appreciated it, really. But how do you explain a heartbreak that wasn't loud, just hollow? No big argument, no final scene, just silence. And a message that split my life in two. I didn't even get a chance to fight for us. He didn't give me that. And somewhere in all that stillness, I knew I would never beg someone to love me. So I stopped reading his message. I stopped replaying the moment I got it, and I started sitting with the one truth I couldn't ignore. He was gone, but I was still here. Broken, yes, but breathing. And breath meant I had something left. He thought he ended the story when he sent that text. What he didn't realize is that he just handed me the pen. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. Every corner of the house reminded me of what used to be. His cologne still lingered on the coat he left behind, like a ghost refusing to let go. But I wasn't going to live haunted. I gave myself permission to grieve, to cry at odd hours, to skip meals, to not be okay. But only for a while. I told myself, you get 30 days, then you get up. So I started slow, really slow. I'd wake up, open the curtains, make coffee, just to prove to myself that I still had a routine, even if it didn't include him. I took long walks, listened to music I hadn't played in years, let the silence become mine again. I wasn't rushing to feel better. I was learning to sit with the ache without letting it drown me. The pain was still there, but it didn't control me anymore. It became part of my rhythm. One afternoon, I found an old box under the bed, filled with little crafts I used to make when life was simpler. Painted coasters, scented candles, beaded bracelets, things I made to calm my mind when things got too loud, and suddenly that spark, the one I thought he'd crushed, flickered back to life. I didn't know what I was doing yet, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was becoming again. I started making things again. Not to sell, not at first, but just to feel useful. My hands needed to move, to create, to heal. It felt good, you know? Sitting at the kitchen table, candles lit, music playing low, just me and my thoughts, no apologies, no compromise. Each bracelet felt like a quiet declaration. I'm still here. I'm still worthy. Somewhere between the threads and beads, I began stitching myself back together. A friend came over one evening and saw what I was making. She picked up a pair of earrings and said, "Lena, people would buy this. Seriously." I laughed it off at first, but later that night, the idea wouldn't let me sleep, so I took a leap. I opened a tiny online store, barely advertised it, and waited. The first sale came in 2 days later, from someone I didn't even know. It felt like the universe whispering, "See, you're not invisible." That first sale changed something in me. Not just because of the money, it was barely anything, but because someone, a complete stranger, saw value in something I made. Not something I did for Marcelo, not something tied to our past. It was mine. It belonged to the woman I was rediscovering. That quiet strength inside me, it hadn't died. It had just been waiting for space to breathe. I started getting messages from women I'd never met. Women who saw my pieces online and asked about custom orders, gift sets, even workshops. But they weren't just buying jewelry. They were sending messages like, "Your story inspired me," or "I left someone like that too." It wasn't just a shop anymore. It was a quiet rebellion. A reminder that the version of me he walked away from was the very version people now respected. I didn't need to post angry quotes or blast my story on social media for revenge. My work was my story. My healing became my message. There was a strange peace in that, in choosing not to chase what left me, but to build something so whole it didn't miss what was gone. Marcelo was out there living his new lifestyle, and honestly, I hoped he enjoyed it. Because I wasn't building a lifestyle. I was building a life. One with mornings that felt like possibility again, with hands that didn't tremble, but created. With a heart that still believed in purpose, even if it didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. I wasn't unbothered because I didn't feel pain. I was unbothered because I chose not to stay in it. He walked away from something real. And I started planting something that would outgrow even my wildest hopes. It started with one article, a small local feature titled, "From Heartbreak to Handmade, The Woman Who Rebuilt from Scratch." I didn't even know they were writing it until a customer sent me the link. I read it 3 times in disbelief. My story, my name, in print. It felt surreal, like someone had taken all the shattered pieces of me and turned them into a mosaic worth framing. For the first time, I saw myself the way others had started to see me, strong, creative, resilient. From there, things moved fast. More orders, interview requests, collaborations I never imagined. Every time I looked at my growing wait list, I thought back to that morning, the one when I got his message. He left thinking he was walking into a better life. And here I was, building mine with both hands, no shortcuts, no someone else's money. Just me, showing up every single day, making beauty out of what was almost ruin. I didn't talk about Marcelo publicly. I didn't need to. People read between the lines. They saw the story in the details, the woman who was left behind and decided to rise anyway. That's the part that stuck with people. Not the betrayal, but the rebuild. I became something he never expected, admired. Not just for surviving, but for creating something so real, so hers, that even strangers felt proud of me. What no one saw was how hard I worked behind the scenes. Late nights fulfilling orders with aching wrists, early mornings drafting packaging ideas over coffee. I learned things I never thought I'd need to know: shipping logistics, website coding, wholesale contracts. Every obstacle became a lesson, every mistake a notch in my growth. And somewhere in that chaos, I stopped thinking about Marcelo. Not out of spite, just irrelevance. But life has a strange way of circling back. One of my clients tagged me in a post. She was wearing my earrings at an event Marcelo also happened to attend. He saw it. I know he did because 2 days later, I saw his name flash across my screen. A message I didn't open. Just his name alone triggered something old. Not pain, not anger. Just a reminder of how far I'd come. The woman he left no longer existed. And honestly, I didn't miss her. My friends joked, "He's watching you glow up and choke on regret." Maybe. But that wasn't what drove me. I wasn't building a life to make him jealous. I was building a life that made me proud to wake up in. There's a different kind of power in not reacting, in knowing someone once tried to break you, and now you're too far ahead for their words to even reach. He used to be the center of my world. Now, he was background noise. I started getting invited to panels and networking events, rooms I never imagined myself in. Women would walk up to me, eyes shining, saying things like, "You reminded me I could start over too." And that meant more than any paycheck ever could. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about belonging, being seen. And not for who I had been with him, but for who I had become without him. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking, would he even recognize me now? Not just the way I dressed or how I carried myself, but the peace in my face, the quiet confidence in my voice. I no longer looked like someone waiting to be chosen. I looked like someone who had already chosen herself. The irony? He left in search of someone who could match his new status. Meanwhile, I had grown into a woman who outshined it. And yet, I never went looking for him. Didn't scroll through his life, didn't ask friends about updates. I had no interest in the version of me who would have needed to compare. The truth was simple. I had risen. Quietly. Fully. Without asking permission. And he never saw it coming. Not because I was hiding, but because he never bothered to look deeper. That was about to change. The invitation came in a cream envelope with gold lettering. Elegant, understated. A gala for women entrepreneurs, hosted at one of the most exclusive venues in the city. I almost didn't go. Not because I didn't feel worthy, but because I didn't need the spotlight to validate me anymore. But something nudged me. Not spite. Something quieter. Curiosity, maybe. The kind that says, go see the world you built. Go own it. I walked in wearing a dress that made me feel like a force. Not flashy, just powerful. The kind of confidence money can't buy, and men like Marcelo don't see coming. The room sparkled with success stories. Women who rebuilt, redefined, reclaimed. And right there, in the middle of a conversation about scaling my shop internationally, I saw him. Across the room. Same tailored suits, same practiced smile. But something in his eyes looked different. He didn't recognize me at first. Isn't that something? The man who once knew every freckle on my shoulder now took a few seconds to place me. I watched the moment it clicked, the twitch in his brow, the awkward smile that followed. He was with her, the woman he'd chosen. She looked exactly like the life he thought he wanted, polished, posed, and painfully distant. I didn't feel rage. I felt confirmation. He made his way over, like someone stepping into a memory they're not sure they belong in anymore. "You look different," he said, his voice unsure, eyes darting like he didn't know where to land. I smiled, not to be polite, but because I meant it. "I am," I said. "I match my status now." He blinked, and for a moment I saw the weight of those words hit him. Not because they were sharp, because they were true. There was so much I could have said. About the nights I cried alone. About the way he left like I was luggage too heavy to carry into his new life. But I didn't. I didn't need to. My presence was the closure. My success was the punctuation. He stood there in silence, trying to fill the air with small talk. But the silence between us said more than words ever could. This was not a reunion. It was a reckoning. She hovered nearby, the new woman, clearly uncomfortable, as if she felt the shift in power without understanding why. And in that moment, I realized something. He hadn't upgraded. He had settled. He traded a partner for a prop. A woman he could show off, not build with. And I had become someone no man could simply plan around. I didn't just survive being discarded. I turned it into my introduction. As he stood there, fumbling for words, I glanced around the room. Women networking, laughing, celebrating their growth. This was my world now, not his, not ours. Mine. And I realized he didn't belong in it. Not because he wasn't welcome, but because he had removed himself the moment he chose status over substance. He was a tourist in the life I had fought to build, and he knew it. He looked like he wanted to say something meaningful, something that could undo the damage. But there are no do-overs in stories like mine, just chapters. And this one was closing without a dramatic ending. I nodded politely, turned back to the group I'd been speaking with, and just like that, he became background again. Not an enemy, not even a regret, just irrelevant. What he never understood was that you don't measure a woman by what she survives, you measure her by what she creates afterward. And I had created a life he couldn't afford to enter. He searched for a woman to match his wealth. I became a woman who made her own. And as the cameras flashed and glasses clinked around me, I wasn't thinking about him at all. I never responded to the messages he sent after the gala. There were 3 of them, each one a little longer, a little more desperate, like he was suddenly remembering what he had let go. But I didn't need to read them. I already knew the story. He left, thinking I was holding him back. Now he wanted a piece of what he didn't help build. That's not how my life worked anymore. I had stopped accepting crumbs the day I learned to bake my own bread. My days were full, and not just with business. With coffee dates, deep belly laughs, books I never made time for when I was too busy holding a relationship together by myself. I started mentoring other women too. Women who had been told they were too simple, too emotional, not ambitious enough. Funny how the same traits that made me disposable to him became the foundation of my power. I didn't just recover. I redefined. People started quoting me, not influencers, real women, mothers, caregivers, survivors. One quote spread like wildfire. If someone leaves you because you're not enough for their status, they were never enough for your story. I didn't even realize it had gone viral until a journalist called to ask if they could print it. And there it was. Printed, posted, shared. My truth, in my own words. No bitterness, just clarity. Sometimes people ask me if I ever wanted to get back at him. If I dreamed of revenge, something dramatic, something public. But honestly, no. What would be the point? He has to live with the truth, that he walked away from a woman who turned heartbreak into purpose. That's a burden I never had to carry. And that in itself is justice. I didn't burn bridges. I just stopped waiting at the ones he abandoned. I don't flinch when I hear his name now. It holds no power, no sting. Just a dull reminder of a lesson well learned. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop needing closure from the person who hurt you. I gave myself the closure. I gave myself everything. And that's something no apology, no message, no regret can rewrite. I didn't rise to prove him wrong. I rose because staying down was never an option. And even now, when my story is mentioned in interviews or shared by others, I keep the focus where it belongs. Not on what was taken from me, but on what I built. My life isn't a cautionary tale. It's a blueprint for women who were left, overlooked, underestimated, and who came back stronger, softer, and smarter. I didn't just survive the rewrite. I became the author. Sometimes I look back and wonder how it all unraveled so quickly, how one message could collapse a marriage. But the truth is, it didn't collapse it. It revealed it. The imbalance, the silence, the way I'd been carrying more than my share for too long. That text didn't destroy me. It freed me. And freedom, I've learned, doesn't always come wrapped in kindness. Sometimes it shows up looking like heartbreak. My home feels different now, not because it's bigger or filled with more things, but because every inch of it reflects me. My colors, my choices, my peace. There's no second guessing, no shrinking, no apologizing for taking up space. I laugh louder now. I rest better. I look in the mirror and see someone I would have admired even if I'd never been through any of it. That's the real victory, not the success, the self. He wrote me out of his plans with a single sentence, but I wrote myself into something far greater. A story that doesn't end with heartbreak, but with wholeness. A life that isn't perfect, but is fully mine. And if he ever wonders what became of the woman he left behind, I hope he realizes she didn't just move on. She became better than anything he could have dreamed.